Hey, what's going on, everyone? Taylor here, and today we have a very special video. Today we're doing a Tales of Arise spoiler cast, and so we'll do some general thoughts, but probably beat the game first before really finish this video. And I'm super excited to have Jay from the channel JRPG joining me today. So, Jay, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, no problem at all. It's I've been dying to talk about this game for ages.
I
Because
know
playing it
it's
for a review is very tricky.
right. Yeah, it's been a long time coming for sure. I'm sure people know your channel, but for those of you, for those that might not, tell us a little bit about your channel.
I mean, yeah, it's a general JRPG channel. Some people get the pun, some people don't. The JRPG, yeah, I mean, mainly I would like to have my output more, and I would cover more games. But in general, I cover pretty much anything major in the JRPG space. Some things not so major, and yeah, Japanese games in general. Reviews and pretty much just reviews at the moment.
Very cool. Yeah, and like I'll leave a link to his channel in the description, so make sure you go check out his channel if you're not subscribed already. And so before we like really get into the meat of the game, I kind of wanted to give a little bit of history with or share our history with the series because I think a lot of people are probably coming into this game a lot like maybe with Persona 5 where this is their first Tales game. This is their first game in the series. So how far back does your history go with the Tales series, and like what are some of your favorite games?
So history-wise, like the first Tales game I ever played was Tales of Symphonia. Like many people, it was the Tales of Arise of Tales, basically. It was the first breakout hit, and I owned a GameCube when it came out. That was the console I had, and I remember like going in, and there were two games that came out on exactly the same day here. It was Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness and Tales of Symphonia. And I bought Pokemon XD and then returned it the next day and picked up Tales of Symphonia, and that was the best decision I ever made. So Tales of Symphonia is where I started, and that is the game I probably credit with what cemented my love of JRPGs in general. Final Fantasy IX kicked it off, but Tales of Symphonia was like, yeah, I need to play more of this specific genre now. And so after that, I basically played everything that came out that I could get my hands on. I didn't, when they first come out, get to play either Vesperia or Abyss until much later because I didn't have a PlayStation 2 for Abyss, and I didn't have an Xbox 360 for a long time until pretty close to the end of its life cycle. But yeah, I mean, basically every game since then, especially the PlayStation 3 stuff, and I've gone back to play things like Eternia and the handheld ones, most of the handheld ones.
Nice. And excluding Arise, what would you say is your favorite in the series?
Exilia is my favorite. It's my favorite game of all time, in general. I don't think it's the best game. I don't think it's the best JRPG. I do think it's the best in the Tales series for character-driven gamers like I am, like people who like a character-driven story. Closely followed by Symphonia. Symphonia was my favorite game for a long, 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 long time.
Nice. Yeah. And mine's is pretty much similar. I actually started with Destiny back on the PS1 and then really skipped around. I didn't play Symphonia until the HD remaster on PS3, but really I think I dove in hard with like Abyss and then the two Exilia games. And my opinion with the Tales series has always been like they've been like enjoyable, but they've never like blown me away like a Final Fantasy or a Persona. But I still like really enjoyed them. Like very few JRPGs have like a intense action battle system like that. At least as time was going on back then, there weren't as many as there are now. But I would say my favorite is probably Exilia 2, if we're not counting Arise, because of same thing. The story I loved Elle, the little girl character, and that whole journey, and I loved the combat where you could swap to different weapons and stuff. Like that was just a really fun system. And then the ending where you kind of have to make that choice was pretty heartbreaking. I guess I made the the harder choice. um,
But you didn't save beforehand?
I didn't think about that. I thought that was probably a good idea. I probably should have done that. um, but yeah, so with that out of the way, let's kind of just dive in with our thoughts. So, what did you think of Tales of Arise?
I mean, for anyone who's seen my review, obviously, I loved it. I loved pretty much every second of it. There was very little that I really don't think I had a problem with it at all, actually. And there is usually something I can easily pick out, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head I did not like. Um, yeah, I mean, easily my game of the year this year, and it could quite possibly, which I said in my review too, was I'd have to go back and play Exilia like right now and experience it back to back to figure out whether Arise is now my favorite game over Exilia because I'm just not sure. It was that good for me.
So, what about Arise would have leapfrogged Exilia, or what did you like most about it?
Well, I mean, I think that Arise is just overall a better game in general, and yeah, presentation, of course, that's just a given. Um, but just even just polish and especially things like world design. Um, I think the battle system is at least on par. I don't think it's worse than Exilia. I don't know whether it's better. Again, I'd have to really go back and play Exilia right now to figure that out. Um, the only hitch is. Uh, I love Exilia's cast. Like every character, including the villains and anti-heroes. So it's tricky because I love the party. I love the cast in Tales of Arise, but it's much smaller
Hmm.
in terms of like actual long-term characters. So even secondary characters is much smaller. So that's probably the only place it doesn't take over Exilia for me. But yeah, I think it's a much better game overall in pretty much every aspect.
Yeah, no, I think I would agree with you generally, like with any of the games, like you said, obviously the presentation style takes just a giant leap. It almost doesn't look like it belongs in the same series in a lot of ways. Um, and I like that you mentioned world design because that has always been my problem with the Tales games, especially dungeons, and just the I don't even know. I would like to call them connecting zones. Basically, the zones between towns have always been either like extremely linear or just boring. And I think Tales of Arise solved that in a really great way. Um, to me, I think, and I said this in my review, was like everything weaves together so perfectly because it's like you to craft stuff you need parts and you get parts for monsters and the mining nodes. So you need to always be fighting and you need to like be looking at the mining node, so that encourages you to explore. And then you always find, I feel like there's always something good in a chest. It's always worth going around that down that hallway just in case, and fighting the bosses because the bosses increase your cure points. But I think we're getting a little bit ahead of things. But like, let's start with the story. I think you're talking about character driven story. I think I've connected with this in a way that I haven't before, and I think it is because the characters are so strong, and it's kind of a relatable story for, I think, for some people, like trying to rise above what you are given. Like you start off as a slave and you're trying to just like liberate the world. So yeah, talk to me a little bit about what you thought of just the story a little more deeply.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was how like the character writing and the characterization in that is very strong, but the world building itself is really good, and it centers around the characters like all Tales games do, but it did really feel like Dana, which you're exploring around in for most of the game, kind of is a real place. Um, or it sort of feels like it, and not as in real as in real life, as in like it just feels like it could exist. Whereas maybe we get out of the realms of possibility in
Mm-hmm.
many of the other games. I thought the story in general kept me hooked. Like after you get over the um, the start, and by the start I mean basically like 40% of the game.
Yeah.
Because, like it isn't really until, and this is a Tales thing in general, Tales starts with these cliched, formulaic stories, and they start that way because they know that at some point it's not going to be that anymore. And it makes that shift from this, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen, to what the hell just happened. It makes that shift just hit so much harder. So once once you get to maybe like the fourth region, I think is when the game really start kicking it up with story wise. There were just some moments that hit, so many moments actually. It did take me back to playing Symphonia. I was like 13 when I was playing Symphonia, and I just remember when like a big twist would happen, be like, what? And like I was exactly the same with Arise, which I haven't really been like that with Tales for a while. Like I know the twists happen, but they're twists and they're enjoyable, but they've never like blown my mind before. Like just the one part in Arise that did was the Red Woman. With that reveal was just bang. Like what the hell is going on? I paused the game and walked around the house for 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, let's dive into that. So for those that have gotten pretty far into the game or beat the game, the Red Woman, she like, it's so funny because I almost want to replay the game from the beginning and see if I can spot her. I wonder if they were like plotting her or like planting her early in the game and we didn't even notice, because when you find out who she is, basically she's like she's a alien, right? She's a Helganquil, right? Or she's one of many, but so
Yeah.
where she comes into the forefront of the story is like at the end of like part 1, if you will, and where you beat what's the main villain's name?
Volron.
Volron, thank you. Yeah, Volron. Like when you beat him, she kind of steps up and takes the Renis Alma, which is I guess we find out at some point that the whole reason she's doing what she's doing is because the Renis Alma can cure her thorns. And so the whole game, you're like trying to collect the spirit. What are they called? The spirit
Master Cores.
Master Cores. Thank you, God. There's so much jargon in this game.
Yeah.
You're trying to collect the Master Cores because you need them to summon the Renis Alma, and they try to do it, and it's not working. And then the Red Woman appears, and she's got a dark Master Core, and you didn't even know that there was one. And then she steals the Renis Alma and runs away, and you're like, what do we do?
Yeah. Well, see, what you said, like, if they were planning it, and they were, because this is what blew my mind. So when, she shows up to takes it, and you're like, well, that's what the hell has just happened. So you're sort of like freaked out there. But then the very next scene they play is the conversation they have with the party members, and they're talking about having seen her before. They said, yeah, we saw him with Balsef, and he was even with you, Dohalim, and but Dohalim and Shion hadn't seen her. But I did remember seeing her standing right next to Balsef as you walk into her. She's standing right next to him sitting on the throne. And that's when I paused the game and started walking around the house just going, she was there. she was there every time. How did I not like even think about this before? Like as soon as they said it, I remembered seeing her, but I had never even given it a second thought until then. Like I just thought, I guess the first time I saw her with Balsef, I was like, oh, she's just like an attendant, like one of his lackeys or whatever. But yeah, she was there every single time. And you can see that, like, I've been playing New Game Plus as well, and you can see that she is there every single time with every new lord. And you're like, how did I not even consider that she was some sort of, like, plot device? So yeah, that's what really blew my mind. That part in particular was just that reveal, and the fact that they had been the entire time parading her around in full view, and you just never even gave it a second thought.
No, that was pretty awesome. No, I like that. And it's really funny because leading up to her, like you said, you're talking about like the cliche story. Essentially, you're collecting like elemental MacGuffins, right? It's like we got to go to the fire, get the fire one, and then the air one, and I'm like, oh my God, is this where the story's going? But then when part 1 sort of ends and it gets to the second half of the story, I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I was really thinking, I'm like, oh, please don't do what they did in Dragon Quest where they make you do it again or whatever. But they didn't do that, thankfully.
Yeah.
So of all the characters, like who would you say was your favorite if you had a single favorite character, whether it be in the party or a villain or a side character?
Shion is my favorite. Shion, sorry. I keep reverting to saying Shion because that's how we all just assumed it was going to be said before the game came
Right. Yeah.
out. But Shion is it was my favorite. I just think I'm in general I'm a sucker for that character archetype. But I thought her writing was really good, especially like in the later stages. And like you do gotta like her and Alphen together. I think rather than because I mean Tails has always had implied relationships, implied romance, implied relationships. Like yeah, it probably happened, but there's nothing really that concrete. But I mean, yeah, it was nice to see. If even it wasn't really confirmed until the end credits, but even still, it was cool to see. But I think the party in general was really strong. There's not a character I dislike. I mean, Lore is probably the closest I get to not caring that much. Like I don't really care that much about Lore, but love Rinwell, Kisara, and Dohalim. Yeah, love the whole party together. I think it's a great cast and great group dynamic in general.
Yeah, no, and I think I agree with you. I think I liked Shion's arc because yeah, it's like it really is like a full arc. Like at first she's very standoffish because of her thorns. I mean, she's never been able to really interact with somebody, and because of that, she's always been isolated. And now that Alphen can't feel pain for a certain chunk of the game, and then even when he is able to, he still is like, I'm willing to put up with the pain because I care about you so much, and to see her like come to grips with that slowly was really interesting. And I really liked all like I feel like sometimes JRPGs can be like, here's a new character because we need you to have a new character, but I liked in Arise where like it felt
Yeah, because we need an old guy,
yeah.
and we need a teen, and we need a weird animal thing.
Right. But like every character felt appropriately, like it wasn't just like I'll join you because like it felt like they were actually joining the party for a reason. It's like we're just trying to liberate the world, and everybody's like I got my reason to do that, and some of those reasons were heartbreaking. I mean, we're in full spoiler mode now, so like when Kisara loses her brother in a pretty like horrifying way. He like just melts in front of her, and she kind of blames Dohalim for that. Like I was like, oh man, that was brutal. Yeah, like what did you think of that scene? Because to me, that was like the first hint that like, oh, this is not a typical Tales game. We're like gonna go places here.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of I've seen a lot of parallels with other Tales games in terms of like in terms of particular story beats and story aspects, and that scene in particular reminded me of Symphonia, when the the people in like the human ranches turned into hideous monsters, and then you have to kill them. And they could have been like your family member or your close friend. So like that sort of yeah it when he faded away, and like I have to say like I didn't have too strong of a reaction to that particular scene. But I knew that was going to go places further. Like I knew immediately from then, oh shit, he's not like this is not just going to be it's just this realm where people melt. Like it's gonna be this one-off little plot device. So it put me on edge for what the hell was going to happen next and where this was going to go.
Yeah, well, let's get into the one that I thought was the most shocking, and like when scenes cut in this game to like an animated 2D like hand drawn animated cutscene, you're like, oh, something big's about to happen, and so they are essentially what's happening is they're about to like burn the Lord one of the lords at the stake, and they set her on fire. Like, oh man, okay, that was bad enough. But then as like the hatred spews from all of them, like the Lord, she knew what she was doing, and then like literally one by one, the whole town just starts melting. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my, that to me was my oh shit moment. I was like, oh my god. So what did you think of that scene in particular?
Yeah, well, I think I said like before we started this, I said it's this weird thing because Tales is obviously always has twists, right? As we've talked about. But there was like a reverse twist because like you get to the fourth region, which is Mahagsar, and you get to the city of Nice, I can't
Yeah,
remember, something like that.
yeah,
And you get there and you find out that like the rebellion there, the Darnan rebellion, had already taken over the city, and then you meet the leader, and he is a dick. He is just
yeah.
like you immediately just want to like just knock him out. And so you think, oh, okay, well this is where the story's going. So they've overtaken the Lord, but these guys are even worse. And now it's going to be like a thing with, like, oh, can we kill our own countrymen to liberate this region? But literally, like I think half an hour later, him, the guy that's shit Deadeye, and the entire town of Darnans just liquefy, just bang straight there. You're like, okay, what the hell just happened? So yeah, that was another big moment for me because not only just because of that just happening, but also the fact that I thought I had figured out the twist of this particular thing, but didn't. Yeah, it was great. It was one of the coolest story moments. I think Mahagsar in general is a really cool area.
No, and I agree. So you said you had figured out the twist. What did you think was going to happen?
Well, see, I thought that was it was going to be, oh, so they did really kill the Lord, but now we're going to deal with this Deadeye guy. So it's going to be like we're going to now go through a moral arc of can we, it looks like everyone's happy here, so should we really take out Deadeye just because he's a dick? So yeah, I thought that's what we were going to go through, sort of like a moral storyline for this region before moving on to the next, but it just was not that at all. Not even close.
No, no, you're right. Yeah, not at all. And then so like yeah, and then when we kind of get to to kind of go back a little bit, we get to the point where we meet the red woman, and we think we have killed Volron, but it's not clear, right? You don't see his body; he just sort of disappears. And then, like, a lot of the stuff about Alphen's past comes up because when you begin the game, he's got the iron mask. He doesn't remember what's happening, but then he starts getting bits and pieces, and eventually, it all once the mask breaks off, he remembers everything. And it turns out that he was an experiment on. It was on Lenegus, right? The satellite planet, or was it on Rena? I forget.
No, it was on Lenegus.
Okay.
Lenegus, yeah.
So it shows, and there's even parts where you interact, like it shows him walking around and stuff like that. And then there's a character that looks, I remember even saying this when she showed up. Naori, I think is her name. She looked a lot like Shion. I was like, oh, is this another twist that's coming? And she was the one that, she put the mask on him, sent him down. He had been sitting there for a while. So what did you think about that whole revelation that he was kind of this Danon that was experimented on?
Yeah, when that all happened, because I think that, I think you had those flashbacks pretty soon. Was it pretty soon after? Yeah. So yeah, it was basically like after all that crazy stuff was happening. So you find out about the Red Woman, and then like, so my mind was already off charts. And then like I come back after walking around, and then like you're in this sort of dream world, and you don't know it's Lenegus at that point in time. But you're just sort of walking around, and yeah, I thought I was just going like, what the hell is this? Like, what is going on? Where is this? What's happening? Yeah, I was confused, but I talked to all the NPCs, even the ones that weren't required to move that story along, and they were saying things like the Sovereign and the Maiden and stuff, and you're thinking like, well, we've heard about sovereigns before, and you're trying to piece it together, but I think they just gave you just enough to be like, to sort of come up with a million possibilities, but not enough to narrow any of them down at that point. I thought it was really good, but it was a weird moment. Macy is just a what the hell moment.
Yeah, and then I kind of want to go just high level for a second. I was surprised at how sci-fi this game got. Because even at the very beginning, like in the trailers, they mention like, oh, Renin is, technologically superior and stuff. I'm like, oh, I figured it would be magical. But then like literally in the opening cutscene, they're like, oh, and the Renin starships. And I was like, whoa, okay, I didn't realize we were getting there. And then like it gets very outer spacey. Like we find Alphin's spaceship. When I saw that, I was like, oh, I got like a Guardians of the Galaxy vibe for some reason. I don't know if it was.
The ship does look similar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so there was that whole thing. And then like they're planning to go to Lenegus. I forget what order this happens in, but basically either they're leaving Lenegus or something. And then the Helganquil kind of reveal themselves, who are like this race of aliens. So like, yeah, what did you think about like how sci-fi this got? Because I was messaged this to Alex from the channel Backlog Battle. I'm like, is this secretly a Star Ocean game?
Yeah, well, I think like a lot of Tales games have had that split. Like, and again, it does come back to a little bit of Symphonia, definitely Exilia, where they, it's the tales of two worlds that they have, and generally, one world is sort of magical and one world is sort of technological, and it does tend to get quite sci-fi. Like even thinking back to Symphonia, like Darius Karlan is the angel world, the half-elf world, and that's just basically like in space. That's just a full sci-fi world. Like it's not like heaven at all. Mm-hmm. It's full sci-fi world. So before the game had come out, because I was following every little thread that I could, and we knew that Rena was technologically advanced, and Dana, got taken over by them, and they were harvesting all of the astral energy from Dana. So we knew all that beforehand. So my theory going into the game was that, oh, okay, so basically Rena is like they have technology. They have, like massive, they have like tanks and stuff. And Dana used to have a bunch of magic users. But, Rena took them over, and they've basically stripped all the magic users and taken all their magic. Because that's when they said, like, Rena has technology and they can use astral arts. I was like, well, that's not fair, right? And like, Dana gets nothing. And, like, you eventually do find out that that's kind of, like, that at least what it's not what the story's about, but you do find out that's kind of what happened in the origin of this game 300 years ago. Was basically exactly that. There were Danans who could use astral arts. Rinwell is one of them. There used to be many, many more. But Rena's superior sci-fi technology took over that and took their astral arts as well, which is a massive pain for Dana. But yeah, I was ready for it to get sci-fi. It might take. I mean, it will take a lot of people by surprise, especially if this is their first Tales game. It didn't surprise me too much that it got sci-fi, perhaps to the degree that it did. Yeah, probably a little. The like Lenegus being, that satellite planet, and then the other I can't remember what was that place called where the other Helganquil is. That you get transported to at some point.
Yeah, it's like another ship or something, or another satellite space station.
Yeah, like
type
another
thing.
Satellite planet, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and maybe like to the extent that it goes sci-fi is a little bit more. The fact it did go sci-fi didn't really shock me at all.
Okay. Yeah, and then, speaking of that, like there is a pretty, I think one of the bigger twists in the game is when you're on Lenegus and you're kind of, finding things out and talking to the Helganquil and stuff, you find out that, the whole game, right, is set up as the Danans versus the Renins, and they're just so different, and they're these different races, and you basically find out that that the Renans were essentially just they took the most magically adept Danans and then just brought them to Rena, and then they're like the same people essentially. So they're not like totally different. And I remember there's like this whole big scene with Dohalim where he's like trying to come to grips with it, and like because he's usually so calm throughout the game, like nothing catches him off guard, and so it was kind of interesting to see him so flustered, I guess. And that was a
Flustered
yeah.
and it was hard for him to believe. And he normally just believed he was the one like positing the wildest theories before. Like he was the one who always was way out there and instantly believing. But yeah, he just couldn't believe that part. I thought it was a nice touch.
Yeah, and because it's interesting because he's actually one of the lords in they're mostly they're set up as villains that you have to beat, and you do fight him, but like he obviously joins your party as well. So it was just interesting full circle arc for him. But yeah, what did you think of that twist that they were essentially the same people?
Yeah, well, that the whole thing with like the Helganquil, which are the red women that you see. They're called Helganquil. They can transform themselves, like shapeshift. That's why they turn into the red women. But yeah, that whole twist that there basically were no Darnans and Renans. They were all just Darnans at some point, and the Helganquil are like the real Renans. And yeah, they're almost wiped out at this point in the story, which is basically why the story is happening, because the plan for the spirit of Rena really has to accelerate because he's going to run out of help soon. Yeah, I thought it was a good twist, mainly for the fact that you pointed out that Dohalim had to come to terms with it. Like he didn't believe it at first, and it was really hard for him to understand. And I think that was just a great piece of character writing, like turning such a big story twist, not so much, to make it not so much about the world, but to make it more about Dohalim, was really clever. And it was, it was a shock.
And I think that's kind of I like what you're saying, how you make it about the characters, because I've always heard this saying where it's simple story, complex characters, and JRPGs tend to have it the other way. But I think Arise does a good job of balancing both. Like each character has like pretty complex reasons for doing the things that they're doing, and yeah, like I almost felt like in a way Dohalim was sort of a background character for so much of the game. So it was kind of nice to give a big kind of meaty piece of story for him to kind of, I guess, bite into, for lack of a better term, at the end. But then, yeah, I mean, when it does, like near the end, it turns out like Rena's not even really a planet. Like I think you called it an apple core before we started. It's basically like an apple core, and you sort of start getting hints of that, right? Because when you're on Lenegis, you're talking to people, and like as you're talking to people, nobody's really been to Rena. And so it's like, what's happening? And so when you find out, it's essentially like you just see the front of the planet and it's like a shell, basically. I was like, oh my God, like that's what's happening. I thought we would go to Rena at some point, but the fact that it's not even really a planet was pretty surprising. So like, yeah, what did you think about like when that revelation came up?
Yeah, when that cutscene played, I was like, "Holy crap! It's not even a planet. It's just it's like I immediately I was like, it just seriously just looks like this apple, like this chewed up apple core, and like, but you see the front of it, and it's like the front is projecting, like the image of this beautiful paradise planet, but it's just it's essentially just a dead piece of nothing up there, and that was a huge revelation again because yeah, you think, oh well, we're going to go to Rena and the sovereign's going to be there or whatever. I was thinking before we went there, like Lennigus said, oh, we'd never been to Rena before. All that stuff was going on, and what was going through my mind was, oh, like we're going to get to Rena and it's basically going to be like almost exactly the same as Dana, but it's going to be like, the sovereign has a bunch of slaves there. Like it's going to be a terrible place as well. But I didn't expect it to just essentially not be a planet at
Yeah.
all, and for like the Sovereign to more or less not exist, outside of Alphen and Volron, um, like basically nothing that you learn in the early stages is even close to being true by the end of the story.
No, not at all. Well, and it's a bit funny that you mentioned Volron because that's also another piece, right? We find out that he's not really dead, and you kind of have to um, fight him again. But did you always kind of know in the back of your head that like, yeah, we'll probably see him again?
Well, um, when we beat him the first time down on the in his realm, what's his realm called? Can't remember.
I can't remember either.
Gareth Har no, something like
They're
that.
all like made up words,
I
so
think
it's
it's GH.
yeah.
But yeah, when you beat him the first time, I thought, okay, well that's like kind of over. Like after you beat him because it's a two-phase fight, right? So like you beat him the first time, and then he goes full sovereign, and then you beat him again, and I thought, okay, well that's over then. I wasn't expecting him again until he showed up again later in the wedge. Was he in the? Yeah, he was hung up in the wedge, wasn't he?
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's right. There's that thing that kind of drops in the ocean. Yeah.
yeah, so he was like strung up there, and then like when you see him hung up and burning in the flames, I was like, oh, he's definitely coming back. He's
Hmm.
coming back at some point. But when he did, in the end, I think I kind of forgotten that, and it did take me a little bit by surprise. Um, I always thought he was coming back, but I actually thought he would have come back like earlier than he did, earlier than basically the very closing moments of the game.
Yeah. No, it's pretty much the end. Yeah, like really, really far back there. Yeah. So I mean, that's most of the core. Um, I guess story bits, if you will. I want to see if there is anything that I left off. I mean, is there anything else in the story that you want to touch on before we move on to anything else?
I think, like, you've said it a couple of times now with everybody has their own reasons for being there. And I think that's important. I think like and the characterization is all good. Um like when you meet Law for the first time, he's part of the basically the Renan police force, even though he's a Darnan. And and at the time you're with Zephyr from the start of the game.
Hmm.
And yeah, and you as soon as you see him, you see like this shocked look on Zephyr's face, and then you actually get into a battle with Law and a bunch of the Renan police force. And you can actually physically see that Zephyr is not fighting. Like he's in the battle, but he's like an AI control character who's normally like punching crap up all over the joint. You can hear him like yelling his moves. Um, but he's like not fighting. He's like specifically not, and Law is wailing on him, and he's just
Mhm.
not fighting at all. And so, like, yeah, but you get that revelation where, well, Law is Zephyr's son, um, and I mean, essentially skipping way ahead into that whole storyline. Law, essentially, the reason for him leaving the Renan police force is because the Renans were about to assassinate Zephyr. So Lord breaks ranks and jumps out and briefly saves him. Was that was that something you were expecting for him to be briefly saved, only to almost immediately be killed?
Yeah, well, I thought like when they had him like hung up in the town square, I was like, oh, for sure, like he'll just die and there'll be like a big emotional scene. But then, yeah, I didn't expect them to just wait and then for him to like you said, pretty much die right there. Yeah, I didn't expect that. That's for sure.
Yeah, so like Law jumps in, and then you think, oh, they're surrounded. Zephyr's gonna sacrifice himself, and that'll be why Law joins your party. But then like the cavalry arrives, and you're like, oh, they're both gonna be saved. And then like where they give you maybe like a minute and a half of believing that's gonna happen, and then what's his name, turncoat rebellion leader, just turns up and what does he stab him? I can't remember. I think he stabs him or something like that. And yeah, he dies after you escape and run away. But yeah, like that's essentially Law's reason for joining up because they killed his father. Dohalim because I mean he never wanted to be a lord to begin with, and he believes in the message of having some peace on between the worlds. Kisara because she's just basically trying to find a purpose for she's basically for the last 15 years at least she's been in service to Dohalim, but before that she was just a slave like anyone else, to the previous lord who was apparently terrible. And of course Alvin's just trying to find out who he is. Shion is she's probably the one with the strongest, she's the one sort of leading the party in this way because she has very selfish reasons, which turn out to be not selfish in the slightest. Turn out to be the total opposite of selfish.
Yeah, I thought that was
actually. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
No, go
sorry to
ahead.
immediately cut you off. I was thinking when you were saying earlier about like how Alphen didn't feel pain, so she could never let anyone in. That moment on when you beat Almadria on the ship, and like Alphen loses his whole mask when Volron shows up, and then like he goes to grab Shion, and then but he feels the pain for the first time ever and flinches back. I was like, because I could see like Shion's heart breaking, and like my heart was breaking, and I was like,
Yeah.
no, he can feel the pain now. Like, oh, that was such a great moment.
It was tough. And then there's like, I think there's like a scene, like right when like the second half of the game kicks off where you're like walking around town just kind of talking to people or whatever. And Shion is like super standoffish, which she had been like letting you in a little bit. And then she just bounces right out. So that was, that was a great character moment. And even like, I think there's like some scene when they're like around a campfire or something like that when everybody's like, we're all friends. I know you don't know what a friend is or whatever, but like we're here for you. And it's like kind of like a cheesy JRPG moment or whatever, but like I thought it was kind of nice based on how the story was leading up to that point. I thought that was a nice fitting moment. And you had kind of alluded to this earlier, but like at the very very end, like it's essentially a still image. It doesn't really play out animated, but Shion and Alphen do finally get married, which like you said, sometimes it just gets alluded to, but you don't ever see it. So I like that I like that came to like a conclusion and that there was some finality to that.
Yeah, the end credit stuff, like seeing all those illustrations and stuff. You see the wedding. There's multiple pictures of the wedding and just everyone. Yeah, I thought it was nice because yeah, Tales generally has implied relationships, implied romances, but it's never explicit and it's never really shown. But I mean, there was a bunch of moments, like because there's that point where they're on Lenegis, and I think they're getting ready to go to Renna because they think Renna's still a planet at this point. And like Alphen's about to. I mean, I'm fairly confident he was about to say "I love you" to Shion, but she stops him and says like, "Just wait until we're done with this. Like, let's get this done first."
Yeah.
So yeah, it was nice.
Like the way that the story was going, I was kind of hoping the other four characters would kind of pair up because it's like, oh, Law and Rinwell are kind of the younger ones and they kind of like have their moments together. And then obviously I think Kisar like admires Dohalim, and there's like I think this is a side quest, but then there's like in one of the side quests, Kisara's like, oh, I'm really strong, but I don't have a lot of feminine charm. And then Dohalim starts like making up poems. Like, have you done that quest?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, what did you think of that?
That's the one where, because that's the one where, like, it's that sleazy guy or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, baby," to like Shion or something, and then like, oh yeah, I can't. No, or no, does he like Kisara and not? Like, I can't remember. It's one or the other, but it's like yeah, something where they play around with that, and that was fun and funny. And I know what you mean, like the other relationships. So like Law and Rinwell and Kisara and Dohalim, that's like the kind of thing that was in Tales before. Like that's what you would get, and you'd be like, oh, like in your mind, you could be like, oh well, they obviously got together, and you wouldn't be right or wrong for thinking that. so they've always sort of left it open ended for the most part. So that was it was nice to have both though. It was nice to have the explicit and the implied.
No, definitely, for sure. Um, so I mean, as far as like gameplay spoiler stuff, I mean, there's the big one is always like the cameo battles, and we were kind of talking before how or before we started recording, how this is like more extensive than they've done before. Usually it's just like, oh, there's a character over there, I'll just fight him and haha, that's fun. But this, it's like this big, long dungeon. And what's kind of fun is each section of the dungeon is called like Rift of Destiny, Rift of, Zest, Rift of whatever. And so the first cameo battle is with Edna she's from Zestiria, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you have any guesses going in who you thought the cameo battles would be, and like, were you kind of satisfied with Edna being in there?
I had no idea I had no idea who the cameos were going to be. I didn't even have a guess, um, because it can literally be. I don't think they've ever picked like ones that somehow make sense. Like I don't think they've ever
Yeah.
gone, oh well, this one has the world that's closest to this, so we'll put them in. They've just sort of done whatever they feel like. There's no point ever guessing, but like, yeah, generally it's just, you'll do the Colosseum and you beat the advanced battle or whatever, and then after that, oh, there's some new challenges, and it's like, the party from one of the older games comes in, and you're like, yeah, that's cool. And then, in later games, they started expanding it a little bit where you would have maybe a scene and stuff like that. But this is, yeah, huge. And yeah, at first, when it was like, yeah, because the first one is Destiny. So you get the key of Destiny and you go into the Rift and you get transported to some place. And like, I don't know if that was a place from Destiny or not. I can't quite. I'm like, I didn't immediately click for me if it was a place from Destiny, but it's got like this old retro-y music. And then you get into battle and it's got like the old, like a legacy music track. You're like, okay, this is cool. And then, so I was thinking, oh, it's going to be someone from Destiny then, right? And then as soon as I walked up that thing and I saw the back of Edna, I was like, holy shit, it's Edna. Which like, I was very satisfied. Because
Oh
I actually have
yeah.
Edna tattooed on my arm.
Nice.
So I was extremely satisfied. I was like, "Holy crap, it's Edna! This is amazing." But then it's not just Edna, right? I think that's the coolest thing about this whole cameo sequence is not because it's so extensive. Because yeah, that's that first Rift of Destiny, and then it's like Rift of Symphony, and it's the forest from Symphonia with the same like fake out pathways like puzzle
Oh,
mechanic.
I guess I didn't even connect that. That's interesting because I've played a little bit of Symphonia, but not beaten it. So that little like
Well, I know.
teleporting dungeon, or that's from Symphonia, or it's like that
Yeah,
kind
I
of.
can't. I can't remember if that's specifically from Symphonia or it could actually be the puzzle from Vesperia that I'm thinking of. But the actual forest itself, I know the exact place that they were aiming to reproduce.
That's cool.
Um, from Symphonia, and that had the Symphonia battle music as well. I immediately noticed that, and I think it was a new arrangement of it even. Where I don't know if they did the same for those Destiny tracks. And you get there, and that's just like a random boss, and then after that, it's like I think that's when you go to the Zest Rift, right? And that I was like, holy crap, because that was from Zestiria, like that zone. Um, it's the mountain zone where uh, the dragon is. Um, that is the next cameo battle essentially. But I was like blown away by that zone. I was like, holy crap, Zestiria looks amazing in this new in this new graphic section. We should just get a quick remake of Zestiria. But yeah, then you go up there and then you have to fight I
Eisen?
can't remember his Eisen, yeah.
Huh.
So you have to fight Edna's brother, who in Zestiria is the dragon. He'd already been turned into a dragon. But in Berseria, obviously he's a main character, so they haven't seen each other for presumably I think thousands of years. Apart from Edna seeing him as a dragon. So yeah, you fight Eisen and then you keep going and you go to like I can't. The other two didn't spot me off the top of my head. There was like an ice world, and it was the Abyss Key. I don't know if that was somewhere from Abyss or not. And then there was like a volcano area, which was Berseria. I think it was called like of the Scarlet Knight or something, which was meant to be a reference to Berseria. And that's when you fight both of them, Eisen and Edna, together. And God, that was a hard fight at first. Um, and then you get the key of Vesper, and it's like the big fake out moment. He's like, "Holy crap! What? There's more after this. Like we've just beaten the both of them together. And you think we're going to Vesperia world now, and you use it and you go in, and then you're in the like that final area from Exilia 2, and Kronos is there. Um, so it was a total fake out moment, and that was cool as well because I loved that fight and that whole sequence. It's so long and in depth, and it like alludes to something that we've sort of, it's been canon, but like not in a way that matters. In that, Maxwell, the Lord of Summon Spirits, and Kronos, the Lord of Time, and Origin, who's basically like the god, they sort of exist outside of these worlds, and they are frequently in multiple entries, so they sort of exist outside that. And it was just cool because that's what Kronos basically says, like, I created this place, not Maxwell, not Origin. So like he hints at it as well. There's sort of like this meta universe out there, not that it ever really matters, but it's just cool anyway.
No, yeah, no, it is very neat, and it like I have to be honest. Like at first, when that the Earth Spirit Temple appears, exploring that was really disorienting because you go in and it's not like how you explore. It's like you're always in the battle camera, even and like so when battles appear, they just show up and so I kept losing my bearing. I'm like, did I go in that portal? Did I come from that portal? I kept getting turned around. So at first I was like, oh, this place is so annoying. But then when you finally get to the inner part of it and you're going from one world to the next, that was really fun. And for trophy hunters, and I think you said you got the platinum, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, what's really neat about those extra dungeons is you level up really quick. Because like I went in there like mid 60s and I'm like level 80 already, like by the end, and then like you can just farm Kronos and like level up to 100 pretty quick because that's one of the trophies. Um, so here's something. This is not necessarily spoilers, but I think this is a really fun design thing they did in Arise. The main collectible is costume stuff, which I think is really cool because in a lot of games, it's just like you collect a thing to collect it. Like in, I think, Final Fantasy VII Remake, it was music tracks, and then you could go back and listen to it at the boombox or whatever. But here, it's like a practical use. It's like, all right, you collect an owl, we'll get you like a funny hat or glasses, and then when you get enough of them, you get like a color swap of your outfit or whatever. Are you like into collecting like the fashion outfits or like making your characters look cool in RPGs? Like, do you care about that at all?
Well, in Tales, I never did. Like I was always I'll just play with default. Maybe I would put on, like maybe one accessory or something when I thought it fit with their default outfit or something like that. Um, but in Arise, I found myself changing outfits and accessories like a lot, way more than I ever have before. And I mean, I think that just comes down to the fact that that skits now actually reflect that because like it's always been a problem. Like the reason I think I always kept default was because there was so much outside of what I could do that was stuck in default. Like skits were in default and 2D cutscenes were in default and all of the character portraits were default. Um, but so I could be in some crazy outfit and basically only ever see it like walking around the world, or basically for a lot of the characters only ever in battle and in some cutscenes, because you can only obviously walk around with the one character. So I think that's why I changed so much in JRPGs in general. I do love a creator character system. I can spend ages in creator characters. Like I'm playing Lost Judgment at the moment, and there is a part where you have to play one of the female characters for a brief moment, and you have to like give her a makeover. And I probably spent like 40 minutes in there, like just making the character.
Nice.
So yeah, I in general I'm a sucker, but for Tails, not usually. In Arise, a lot. I was changing a lot.
Yeah, me too. I'm kind of the same way. Like usually I'll just stick with the default outfit, but like some of like, I mean, I think I'm sure this was the case for you, but like when I got my review code, they gave me a code for the Ultimate Edition, so it came with all the costumes and stuff, and it was I know some of them can be kind of pricey, but like I thought it was fun, right? Because there's the school outfits, the samurai, the beach, and then they have like a couple other just random ones. And some of those like were really cool. Like Dohalim, I think I immediately switched him to I don't even know what it was called, but it basically looked like his default outfit, but just a little more stylish. And then I gave him the samurai hair where his hair is kind of slicked back, and to me that just looked better. I really thought that was fun to mess with. Yeah, like I love that. I'm the same way. I love messing with that stuff. Like one of my favorite games of the years was Monster Hunter Stories 2, and you can create a character, and I was constantly changing the hair color and the style and the armors and stuff. So I love that you could do that, and I loved that you could even do it with the weapons, because the weapons you could put like I have this weapon equipped, but I want it to look like this weapon, which doesn't really make any sense, but like who cares? It's a video game. So I thought that
Yeah.
was pretty fun too.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the weapon skins being customizable as well was a great move. It's just because that's the thing, like it is like, oh, this is the best sword in the game, but it looks like crap. Like I don't like the way this sword looks, but I have to use it because no, but yeah, you don't need to do that in Arise. You can just change the weapon skin. Which is brilliant. Yeah, overall I thought the customization was a lot of fun. And like yeah, a lot of the really different outfits are paid DLC, which I mean it kind of sucks, but it's been expected now. Like that's just been the thing since I'm pretty sure either Vesperia or Grace's F started it, and it's been the thing ever since. But it's not. You don't only get different outfits from DLC as well. Like you get a bunch from the story. Like you get like I think like five different outfits for Alphen. Like his initial rags, then his ragtag uh, group outfit, and then you get his that first armor when he gets the armor, and then you get his Renan Sovereign
That's
attire.
right. Yeah.
Um, and you also unlock like for a bunch of the party, you get the Renan outfit. You can get the farmer outfit for everyone. Uh, and then there's the clerk, which is kind of like either chef or servant type thing. But I actually had Alphen in that for a while because he looked good in that clerk outfit.
Yeah.
I think for my New Game Plus run through, he's in the clerk outfit and he wields a giant carrot. Like that's just his look in my New Game Plus
That's awesome.
run. Yeah, so that like it's not only it would be nice if there were more like because most of the outfits you do unlock are palette swaps, but I mean the palette swaps are amazing. Like I could not decide what outfit I should have Shion in because her initial one looks amazing, and then you get like the red one, the red and black one, and I was like, holy crap, it's like vampire goth GF Shion. I can't like not put this on. And then she gets like the blue and black one, and that also looks incredible. So yeah, I mean palette swaps can be good. I think in this case they are good, but it would have been nice maybe just have one or two extra costumes for some of them. I think Alphen gets more than enough. Shion gets enough as well, but the others probably need maybe one more.
No, yeah, I agree with you. I think it would have been cool for them to have some more that you could get in the game. And like I'm the same way. Like to me, the hard decision was with Kisara because like I think her white armor looks really cool, but then she gets a black and gold one. It looks so cool. And there's a shield that like just matches it perfectly, and I just never changed her outfit after that. I'm like, you got a black and gold armor and black and gold shield, and that looks pretty sick. Um,
Yeah, I think I put her in the red one because she gets that shield that looks like a cat's face.
oh
And there
yeah,
was like a red version of that. So I had her in the red thing with like a red cat shield.
nice. And then we can't forget the spa outfits, the towels or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. The towels. That's the other one I was trying to think of.
Which looks, I mean, it's silly, but because I was looking for that scene the whole game because I remember somebody had, maybe it was you that actually that asked, but somebody had asked Bandai Namco if the game was going to be censored, and they said no. And they said they mentioned a spa scene, and I didn't see it. And I'm like, oh, I guess I missed it. And then I think maybe it's only in post game or something. But I'm like, oh, here it is.
I don't think it's not quite post game, but I think there's like a point where a bunch of side quests open, and you think like, oh, you go around and you start doing them, but then there's like maybe a couple of hours later in the main story, another bunch of side quests open up, and that's when I had missed it when that opened up. So I didn't actually find it until like, oh, I was almost done with the game. Because it's just like that one little symbol next to Cislodia, because there's no reason to go back to a lot of these places unless you need to for story. But yeah, that pops up, and there's actually two hot spring scenes. So yeah, like that was funny because yeah, the whole that whole pre-launch rumor was just weird, especially because like yeah, the ESRB had already rated the hot spring scene, like they specifically mentioned it. And a lot of people like, I don't know, they always get mixed reception, but I always just find it a little bit of fun. I thought they were all right in this one. The initial one, like just where Alphen runs out, and then like you see like Rindell's face, and then like Kisara's hand just like pops out. I was like, okay, that's funny.
Yeah, no, that was good. And then it was really funny, like when it swapped and it was with the guys, because like it looks like Law's trying to like sneak over, and then Dohalim comes up and he's gonna be like, oh, he's gonna talk him down. He's like, this is where you become a man or something like that, and he like makes the vines appear and stuff.
Yeah, see, that's the because like basically the hot spring things, because they're just they're like tradition for Tales, but also for like most JRPGs, and they're generally always that same joke, and it's like. Here, I'm not so sure whether Dohalim, whether that really fits his character arc or not, but it's just meant to be a joke in the end. The funny part was the fact that, like, when he said, I can help with that, and then the camera panned over and he had grown vines up the wall. Yeah. That was funny. But, like, you know, the fact that, you know, he was like approving of it and like it didn't really seem to fit him. So I can understand the criticisms they get because essentially they are mostly just the same joke. The guys try to peep, they get found out and get blown up. Generally, like that's the joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, from what I was reading a lot of things in general just about hot spring scenes. And you know, like the differences between the Japanese and the English ones, and it's because like onsens, hot springs, you know, are a huge part of the culture in Japan, and a lot of the things, a lot of the humor that's in the Japanese versions of it, can be stuff like onsen etiquette related, and it's like we're not going to get that joke. Like,
yeah,
a lot of the jokes are impossible to translate. That's why when we see them, it's essentially always the same joke because we can't have the subtleties of these scenes make sense for us.
No, you're right. Yeah, it's funny because the one that pops up, and I don't even think this is a hot spring, and I can't remember, but like there's a bath in Sakura Wars, and there's like a lot of shenanigans that can happen there. But
yeah, that was funny. That was hilarious because I think I put that in the intro to my review of that game. Was the part where remember where you get accused of being a peeping Tom?
Oh, by the Chinese girl or whatever.
Yeah, and then like you meet her again later, and she's like, you, the peeping Tom, and then you can choose one of the options to be like, you were trying to spy on me.
Yeah,
I was like, oh.
That game is so funny. I loved Soccer Wars. That was such a great game.
Yeah, agree. 100% agree.
It got so underappreciated, I feel like. But
yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I'm looking at the timer over here, a little over an hour. I think that's about where I was hoping for. But is there anything else that you wanted to kind of touch on as we wrap up here that we haven't talked about quite yet?
I don't think so. I think I rambled enough. I mean, it's probably a million. Like I could talk about the game for a long time, but I think we covered pretty much everything that makes sense to cover spoiler wise.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like we kind of said at the top of the video, I'll include our channel. Well, you're watching it on my channel, but I'll include links to our reviews below. Definitely go watch both of our reviews. And I think Jay, you had kind of hinted that you might do a little bit more of an in-depth kind of spoiler type video on your channel. Is that something you're kind of working on right now?
Yeah, I'm writing a script at the moment for like some moments in particular, like, and we talked about, I think, most of them here. Like I'm doing like a Red Woman focused video, but it'll touch on other things, especially like yeah, the region for Mahag Sar and Red Women and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm gonna be diving in just to more personally go through like the things that just really like blew my mind, and the importance of a tale story. I think it's going to focus on mainly Tales of Arise, but talk about how yeah, how you can see these things in all tale stories, the cliche into the blow your mind type stuff.
Gotcha. Cool. No, well, I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, if you're not already subscribed to Jay, make sure you subscribe to his channel. If you're not subscribed to mine, if you're coming across this because you came from his channel, maybe definitely subscribe. We make a lot of, I also make a lot of JRPG content, some similar type stuff. But yeah, I think that'll probably do it for the spoiler cast. We appreciate you guys watching. And yeah, I guess we'll see you on the next video. Talk to you later.